The afternoon heat presses down on the asphalt, thick with the kind of silence that follows suspicion. The hum of traffic fades when flashing blue lights pierce through Amara's rearview mirror, slicing the calm into accusation. She exhales slowly, a habit formed from too many moments like this, when respect must be rehearsed and dignity worn like armor. The officer's shadow grows longer in her side mirror, approaching with the stride of someone convinced of authority, not justice. His voice cracks the air before compassion can. She answers softly, measured, every word balanced between fear and restraint. Inside her chest, the storm is quiet for now. There's something sharper than fear behind her eyes, something patient. The city watches, indifferent, as the stage is set for a humiliation neither of them yet understands will define them both. He asks the same question twice, not to seek clarity, but dominance. His tone isn't about law, it's about control. Amara answers softly, words wrapped in patience so refined it borders on defiance. Every syllable she utters reveals more restraint than he deserves. Yet, behind her calm, a silent ledger forms. Each insult, each assumption, each reminder that she is seen, not for who she is, but for what he presumes her to be. The passers-by don't intervene. They never do. They just slow down to watch, their curiosity feeding the imbalance. She feels the weight of generations in that silence, the burden of always having to prove innocence before being allowed humanity. Dunning's voice grows sharper, slicing through the tension like a blade dulled by overuse. He throws careless accusations masked as questions, seeking submission, not truth. Amara listens without flinching, her silence unnerving him. It's not fear he senses, it's composure, a quality unfamiliar to his authority. Every second of restraint she maintains becomes its own quiet act of resistance. The longer she sits, the clearer it becomes. She isn't losing control. She's letting him expose himself to his own arrogance. And that realization, though unspoken, begins to haunt him. The silence between them becomes unbearable. Dunning taps the roof impatiently, muttering under his breath. Amara's eyes rise just enough to meet his. That single look, unbroken, calm, disarms him more than words ever could. It carries history, pain, and an unspoken truth. She's been here before, and she's survived worse. When she finally speaks, her voice is steady and polite, but it lands like a verdict. He doesn't realize that in trying to demean her, he's already revealed his own smallness. Somewhere inside, he feels the weight of being witnessed by someone whose quietness isn't weakness, but warning. He returns to his cruiser, muttering something dismissive, but the confidence in his stride falters. Amara watches him through her windshield, her face unreadable, yet resolute. She knows this moment will not be forgotten. Not by him, not by her. The air feels charged with unfinished consequence. Somewhere, a camera has captured everything. Somewhere, truth waits for its stage. As her car idles, she whispers to herself, not a prayer, but a promise. That respect will not always be demanded. One day it will be given freely. The sound of distant thunder rolls once more, sealing the act with foreboding grace. When pride feels questioned, cruelty comes dressed as procedure. Dunning's irritation festers into spectacle. He steps out again, calling her to exit the vehicle, his tone sharpened to slice through decency. Amara hesitates, not from fear, but from disbelief that the performance must continue. Around them, the street has gathered silent spectators, phones half raised, waiting for tragedy disguised as justice. She opens her door and steps out, each movement deliberate, refusing the narrative of guilt he craves. Dunning circles her like a man seeking proof of a lie that only exists in his own bias. Her silence speaks louder than his authority, and it frightens him in ways he doesn't understand. The air feels heavy, thick with tension, and the echo of history repeating itself under fluorescent daylight. His questions grow petty, each one a reminder that power abused always seeks to humiliate. He demands she explain why she was driving that kind of car, why she's in this neighborhood. The insults hide behind legality, but the contempt is bare. Amira answers each question evenly, her voice a steady metronome against the rhythm of his irritation. Yet, behind her calm lies a calculation. She knows exactly what's happening, and she knows the law better than he ever will. The irony burns quietly between them. The man mocking her authority is unknowingly challenging the very woman whose pen could write his fate. Every humiliation leaves residue, some visible, some buried. He orders her to pop the trunk to prove her compliance. She hesitates only long enough to ensure her silence cuts deeper than protest. As the trunk opens, the world sees the truth. Not contraband, not chaos, just neatly stacked legal files, embossed with the golden seal of the Department of Justice. Dunning's eyes flicker, confusion breaching arrogance. For a moment she almost pities him, but then remembers pity is a privilege not yet earned. She closes the trunk gently, as if sealing away her power for later use. The spectators murmur, sensing a shift they can't yet name. When truth first appears, denial rushes in to drown it. Dunning laughs it off, pretending indifference, pretending control. He waves her to sit back in her car, voice cracking with forced authority. Amira obeys, unbothered, knowing that silence now is strategy, not surrender. She watches him from behind her windshield, the glass between them a transparent wall of irony. He still believes he's winning, still believes the crowd sees a man in charge rather than a man exposed. But the camera phones are still rolling, and the internet has already chosen its witness. As the crowd disperses, the hum of the city returns, but it's not the same sound anymore. Amara drives off under the unflinching gaze of the officer, still scribbling in his notepad. Unaware his moment of dominance has already been recorded into infamy. The road stretches forward, gleaming like a promise waiting to be kept. Behind her, Dunning stands alone, sweating beneath authority that suddenly feels heavier than armor. The world will soon learn what he doesn't yet suspect. That the woman he mocked is the storm that justice itself has been waiting for. The sterile chill of the precinct hits her like a slap. Fluorescent light, polished floors, the stale scent of arrogance masked by disinfectant. Dunning walks beside her, the swagger returning now that walls protect his authority. Amara follows silently, her heels echoing in the corridor, the rhythm of composure mocking his empty confidence. He doesn't yet know that every step she takes is deliberate, leading him closer to his undoing. At the front desk, he begins explaining the incident, spinning half-truths into procedure, his tone dripping with self-importance. She listens, wordless. When he finishes, she calmly requests to speak with the chief, her voice steady, her eyes bright with unspoken power. The room quiets, sensing the arrival of something far larger than a traffic stop. In the chief's office, the air is colder, polished plaques, flags, and the illusion of control. Chief Harlan leans back in his chair, his tone patronizing as he half listens to Dunning's embellished story. Amara stands across from him, silent until his final word fades. Then, without raising her voice, she removes a leather badge case from her bag, opening it with surgical calm. The seal of the Department of Justice gleams beneath the fluorescent light. Every sound in the room halts. The ticking clock, the hum of the air conditioning, even breath itself. Harlan's smugness evaporates, replaced by a slow, creeping dread. Dunning's jaw slackens. For the first time, Amara allows herself the faintest smile, not of triumph, but of quiet revelation. The truth has arrived, and it wears her name. The silence that follows is sharper than accusation. Dunning stammers, his voice cracking, searching for excuses that collapse before they form. Harlan clears his throat, suddenly deferential, his words now honeyed with insincere respect. But Amara does not gloat. She simply recites the law, each clause like a mirror reflecting their misconduct. She details the civil rights provisions violated, the probable cause fabricated, the ethical standards breached. Her tone is calm, clinical, devastating. With every word, Dunning's posture shrinks. The hierarchy has inverted itself, and justice, once mocked, now stands embodied in the woman he ridiculed. By the time she finishes, the chief silences confession enough. When truth surfaces, it doesn't roar, it resonates. Amara gathers her files, her calmness sharper than rage. She tells them an investigation will follow, that the footage and records will be reviewed by federal oversight. Harlan's voice trembles as he assures cooperation. Dunning mutters apologies that sound more like self-pity. Amara doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. The balance has shifted completely, and both men feel it. As she turns to leave, her reflection in the glass door looks almost otherworldly. A woman both wronged and victorious, grace forged through fire. Her silence as she walks out is not emptiness, it's judgment carried like truth itself. As she steps into the fading afternoon light, the city feels different. Alive, alert, aware. The same street that witnessed her humiliation now stands on the edge of revelation. She slides into her car, exhales deeply, and closes her eyes. It's not satisfaction she feels. It's vindication tempered by sorrow. The burden of proving humanity is exhausting, even in victory. Yet, beneath that exhaustion lies purpose. She drives away knowing that this was never just about her. It was about every unseen injustice waiting to be named. Behind her, the precinct looms small in the rearview mirror, a monument to a system about to face its reckoning. Morning comes heavy with consequence. The precinct, once pulsing with routine arrogance, now hums with the uneasy quiet of exposure. Whispers travel faster than reports. Bodycam footage has leaked. Amara's composure, Dunning's taunts, every second of his cruelty recorded for the world to see. Officers avoid each other's eyes in the hallway, as if guilt might spread through glance alone. Harlan storms from his office, barking orders that sound more like pleas for control. Dunning sits at his desk, pale, sweating, the walls closing in. He knows this isn't a scandal. It's a mirror, and the reflection is merciless. Somewhere downtown, Amara sips her coffee, calm as the storm unfolds. She doesn't celebrate. She simply watches justice take its first breath. By noon, the city burns with conversation. Social media threads, news anchors, and angry calls flood every channel. The story has become a movement, and Amara's calm defiance now symbolizes something larger than one encounter. Harlan scrambles for damage control, crafting hollow statements about internal review and professional integrity. Dunning watches the press conference from the break room. Hearing his name become a synonym for shame. The same voice that once commanded fear now trembles at the sound of truth amplified. Outside the building, protesters gather, signs raised, chants rising like thunder. The world has turned its gaze on the uniform that once hid impunity. Inside the chief's office, panic has replaced authority. Harlan paces, red-faced, shuffling through statements drafted by city lawyers. Sergeant Elena Cortez stands silently by the door, her conscience heavy but unbroken. She's seen this before. Truth buried, reputations salvaged, but something about Amara's steadiness lingers like a promise she can't ignore. When Harlan orders the footage suppressed, Cortez doesn't argue aloud. She simply knows what must be done. That night, she makes a copy. Some truths deserve witnesses who refuse silence. The next morning, the full unedited footage appears online. The city erupts, not in chaos, but in awakening. By evening, the city streets glow with the blue light of screens replaying the truth. Commentators dissect every frame, lawyers debate, citizens share, and somewhere between outrage and empathy, understanding begins. Harlan's name trends for all the wrong reasons, his career unraveling before his eyes. Dunning's voicemail fills with threats and sympathy alike, but none reach the core of his unraveling guilt. Meanwhile, Amara stands before a quiet mirror in her apartment, not basking in victory but preparing for the responsibility that truth demands. She knows justice isn't about punishment, it's about transformation. And tomorrow, she will speak. Ush. The next morning, Amara stands at a podium before a sea of microphones and flashing lights. Her words cut through the noise, not with fury, but with truth. She speaks of dignity, of perception, of how easily authority becomes abused when empathy dies. Every sentence is deliberate, anchored in the gravity of lived experience. The crowd listens, not out of obligation, but reverence. Behind her, the city skyline glows in the early sun, reflecting off windows like 1,000 watching eyes. Somewhere in the distance, Dunning watches the broadcast, tears tracing lines through his shame. For the first time, he doesn't feel attacked. He feels seen, stripped of pretense, and that is where redemption begins. Not in applause, but in awareness. The storm doesn't arrive with thunder. It comes with questions. The nation demands to know how often silence has shielded injustice. Amara's face fills every screen, her voice dissected, her integrity praised and doubted in equal measure. But she doesn't flinch from scrutiny. She stands rooted in truth, unmoved by applause or attack. Dunning, meanwhile, hides in his small apartment, blinds drawn, the television echoing her words like judgment. Regret has become his only company. His phone rings, news outlets, colleagues, old friends, but he answers none. Outside, lightning flashes across a restless sky, mirroring the unrest swelling through the streets. Change, it seems, no longer asks for permission. Public fury turns to purpose. Marches fill the avenues, chants rise through the storm, and Amara walks among them. Not as a symbol, but as one voice in a sea of courage. She listens more than she speaks, feeling the collective pulse of a nation demanding accountability. Every sign held high, every footstep pounding wet pavement, becomes a hymn for the voiceless. Cameras catch her walking beside Sergeant Cortez, the unlikely ally who risked everything to make truth seen. Their eyes meet briefly. No words, just mutual respect forged in rebellion. Around them, the world trembles, not from chaos, but from awakening. Inside City Hall, Chief Harlan faces the press, his confidence eroded to dust. Questions barrage him like hailstones, about accountability, about the officers under his command, about the silence he maintained. His practiced answers crumble under the weight of recorded truth. Amara watches from the back row, her gaze unwavering. When he stumbles over her name, mispronouncing it as he once ignored her worth, the irony lands heavy. She doesn't gloat. She just notes how truth, when denied, eventually speaks through the cracks of power. Harlan's downfall is not her doing. It's the echo of his own arrogance, finally finding its return. Night descends, but peace does not. Dunning sits in darkness, the rhythmic drip of rain outside marking time like a sentence. The phone rings again, this time from the department. Suspension pending investigation. His voice cracks as he answers, the last vestige of authority stripped from his tone. When the call ends, silence engulfs him. He looks down at his trembling hands, the same hands that once reached for power and found only emptiness. He wonders how it all went so wrong, how a moment of arrogance became a monument to disgrace. But somewhere inside, a flicker of remorse begins to pulse, a fragile ember in the storm. As dawn breaks, Amara stands on her balcony overlooking the soaked city. The storm has passed, but the streets still glisten with the residue of change. She closes her eyes, breathing in the scent of renewal. Wet asphalt, morning air, the faint sweetness of magnolia drifting through the rain. Somewhere, her phone buzzes with messages of thanks and solidarity, but she doesn't reach for it. Instead, she whispers a quiet prayer, not for punishment, but for understanding. For men like Dunning, for systems like Harlan's, for the world still learning the language of respect. The sky clears slowly, sunlight piercing through lingering clouds. Justice, she realizes, isn't thunder, it's sunrise. Days blur into weeks, and the noise fades into consequence. Dunning's suspension becomes termination. The badge he once wore like armor now sits locked away in an envelope. Cold, weightless, meaningless. He walks the streets without uniform or title, and the stares he once commanded now pass through him. The world he thought beneath him no longer recognizes his authority. He feels small, exposed, but for the first time, aware. Somewhere across town, Amara testifies before a review board, her voice measured and firm. She doesn't mention his name, not out of mercy, but because his actions no longer define the story. The fall, she knows, was never the punishment. It was the beginning of understanding. Chief Harlan's empire collapses faster than he can rebuild it. His resignation speech, scripted and hollow, heirs to a nation unmoved. His eyes flicker with exhaustion, not remorse. The same system he once manipulated now devours him with the precision of poetic justice. Meanwhile, Amara continues her work, not as an avenger, but as a reformer. She sits in long meetings with lawmakers, her calm conviction reshaping policy brick by brick. Redemption, she believes, is not about ruin. It's about rebuilding what arrogance destroyed. Still, she carries the memory of that roadside afternoon, not as pain, but as purpose. For Dunning, silence becomes teacher. He spends long days in a small community center, volunteering under the weight of anonymity. He listens as others speak of encounters like his, of fear and humiliation, of survival in the face of casual cruelty. Each story strips away another layer of denial. At night, he walks home through quiet streets, the echoes of his past following him like footsteps in the rain. He no longer tries to justify what happened, he just listens. And in listening, begins to understand the sound of change. It's not loud. It's the whisper of accountability finally taking root. One evening, Amara receives a letter. Not typed, but handwritten, shaky and hesitant. It's from Dunning. He writes of shame, of realization, of the mirror he now faces each morning. There is no plea for forgiveness, only acknowledgement. She reads it twice, then sets it down beside her case files. The ink has bled slightly where raindrops fell. Evidence of tears, perhaps, or simply the weather. She doesn't respond, but she doesn't discard it either. Instead, she folds it carefully and tucks it between pages of a report titled Reform Initiatives for Ethical Policing. Even remorse, she knows, deserves a place in the archive of progress. Weeks later, Amara speaks at a public forum about justice and reform. Her words flow like rain, steady, cleansing, relentless. In the audience, unseen among hundreds, Dunning sits in the back row. His hands are clasped, eyes lowered, listening. She doesn't notice him, and perhaps she's not meant to. Her voice carries through the auditorium, transforming pain into purpose. She speaks not of revenge, but of responsibility. The courage to see humanity where others saw difference. When applause rises, Dunning remains seated, head bowed. In his stillness, he finds the first breath of redemption. Not from her forgiveness, but from his own awakening. Time has softened the edges of outrage, leaving behind the quiet rhythm of rebuilding. Amara's initiative, the Empathy and Accountability Project, launches across the city, training officers to see not suspects, but souls. She moves through classrooms filled with uniforms, her calm authority transforming skepticism into reflection. The same halls that once echoed with arrogance now hum with humility. Dunning's name surfaces occasionally, whispered among trainees who've heard the story but never known the man. Amara doesn't correct them. She knows redemption isn't earned by recognition. It's proven through persistence. As she leaves another session, sunlight breaks through the clouds, catching her smile in its warmth. Justice at last, feels less like a battle and more like healing. Outside the precinct, a small ceremony gathers beneath the spring sun. The city honors those who fought for reform, and Amara, though reluctant, stands among them. Reporters hover, cameras flash, but her focus drifts to the edges of the crowd where Sergeant Cortez stands, quiet pride in her eyes. Their bond, born of defiance and courage, needs no words. The mayor speaks about accountability and progress, but Amara's attention catches a lone figure at the fringe of the crowd. A familiar face, aged by remorse, standing just close enough to listen but far enough to remain unseen. She says nothing. She simply allows the moment to exist, fragile and redemptive, suspended between recognition and grace. Later that evening, Dunning walks past the police station for the first time in months. The windows are lit from within, glowing like beacons against the twilight. He stops outside, watching recruits gather in a classroom. Their notebooks open as Amara's voice drifts faintly through a speaker system. He listens, unseen, the same way he once ignored her. But now her words land differently. They find the hollow spaces inside him and fill them with something new, understanding. He removes his cap, holds it over his heart, and stands in the soft wash of streetlight, humbled not by punishment, but by the sight of change he helped provoke through his own failure. Amara returns home that night to the quiet hum of her apartment. She places her briefcase down, removes her blazer, and stands by the window overlooking the city she fought to change. The reflection staring back at her is no longer the woman who endured humiliation. It's the woman who redefined its meaning. She thinks of the countless names, unseen but not forgotten, who paved the way for this moment. Her hand rests against the cool glass, and for the first time she allows herself a small tear. Not of pain, but of release. Justice, she realizes, is never complete. It lives in motion, in memory, in the courage to stay kind, even when the world isn't. Weeks later, a graduation ceremony fills the police auditorium. New recruits line up to receive their badges, each one having completed Amara's empathy training. She watches from the audience, unseen pride softening her features. When the final name is called, the recruits rise in unison, applauding not for themselves, but for the ideals they've been taught. Dunning sits among them, not as an officer, but as a volunteer mentor, guiding them to avoid the path he once took. As the applause fades, Amara rises quietly and exits through a side door, stepping into sunlight. The day feels light, the air renewed. Her story is no longer just her own. It belongs to everyone learning that respect, when given freely, heals what injustice once broke.